I wanted to take another minute and just introduce my family to you. I know I showed a quick picture this morning, but Erin and I have been married for just over 10 years, and we have 3 little girls. Lilia is 8, and Caroline turns 6 next Saturday. And then Madeline, the littlest one there closest to the screen, the one that I talked a little bit about this morning, she turns 3 tomorrow. So 3 girls. And I love my girls, and I love that they get to do life together. How many of you have a brother or sister? Just raise your hand if you have a brother or sister. Okay, keep your hand up if you would say, I'm quite different from my brother or my sister. All right, keep your hand up if you say, thank God I'm different than my brother and my sister. Isn't it amazing how 2 people can grow up in the same home with the same parents, have the same basic life situation, and be 2 totally different people? My 2 oldest girls, Lilia and Caroline, are so different from each other. I remember when we were expecting Madeline, our 3rd, we decided that we were going to let our girls know by showing them the picture of the sonogram. And this is like the perfect representation of how different they are from one another. So just to kind of get going tonight, I've enjoyed talking with many of you, but I want to get to know all of you here at the same time. So we're going to do a real quick game. Don't worry, you're not going to have to get up and move around. But it's a game that I like to call Lilia or Caroline. And so I'm going to just tell you 3 ways that they're different from each other and then ask you, are you a Lilia or are you a Caroline? First off, Lilia, my oldest, total extrovert. Just loves people. If she was here with me this weekend, she'd be running around trying to meet all of you. She just gets so much energy from being in social environments. Caroline, the 5-year-old, we're not even sure if she likes people. Like, we'll have the house filled with family and friends, and we'll find her sitting alone in her bedroom with a book. And she can't read. I mean, she's 5, but she just needs to get away. So I'm an extrovert, and I've learned some things. My wife's an introvert. Isn't it interesting how God brings together extroverts and introverts to be tools of sanctification in each other's lives? I've learned some things about extroverts and introverts. Extroverts tend to look at introverts like they're a project. Like, I can fix you. Whatever terrible thing happened to make you so quiet, I can fix this. Like, I can break you out of your little shell and just make your flower blossom. Like, I can. And so extroverts are trying to fix introverts. Introverts look at extroverts like they're monsters. Like, what is wrong with you? Just calm down for a second. Go read a book or something. They're so different. They're so different from each other. How many of you in the room, you're extroverts? You just love being around people. That's a pretty decent amount. A lot of extroverts in the room. I could have just said, how many of you are willing to raise your hand right now? It would have been the same. It would have been the same people. Exact same crowd. You know what? So you're Lilias. The Carolines in the room, I'm not even going to do it to you. Not going to make you raise your hands. You can just sit there. I know you'd be a little something inside of you would die if you hadn't raised your hand as an introvert. You'd get so angry at me and you'd go journal about it later or something. Another way that they are so different is the food that they like. So my mom was born in Seoul, South Korea, so I'm half South Korean, and I grew up eating like spicy ethnic food. I love spicy ethnic food. Korean food is, if you haven't had Korean food, you haven't lived. But there's some spicy stuff out there in Korean food you got to be careful about. And my oldest here, Lilia, she loves spicy food. In fact, her favorite food in the whole world right now is buffalo chicken wings. The spicier the better. She likes them so spicy that she takes a bite and has to drink water. So she's biting, drinking, but she loves it. Caroline, on the other hand, if I even put too much black pepper on her chicken, she's like clawing at her tongue, like spicy hot, crying about it. So how many of you in this room, you're a Lilia? You love spicy food. All right. And then where are all the people, Carolines? You don't like spicy food at all. Yeah, we'll pour some anointing oil on your tongue after service tonight. We'll take care of that. We'll take care of that for you. One more way that they're different, I get to travel and do things like this, which is incredible. One of the greatest things is seeing the fellowship, seeing the Assemblies of God all over the country, and just meeting so many quality people. I want to encourage you, the young leaders in the Assemblies of God are incredible. Every network and district I go to, I'm blown away by the conversations that are happening, the quality of leadership, the desire to be a part of something. I think the future for the Assemblies of God is so incredibly bright. Stay on the team. Just stay on the team. This is why I tell people all the time, you can't change anything from the outside. You can't. So just be grateful that they let you on the team. But when I come back from these trips, I like to bring something back for my girls. It's like my penance. It's my way to get back in the house. And Lilia, my oldest, she loves stuff. And what I mean is like trinkets, toys. I know all kids like that, but she like her favorite store is the dollar store. It doesn't matter. It's not about quality with her. It's quantity. She's a future hoarder. We're praying for her. Like she likes to have stuff, and so I always bring her back something. Now, when Caroline got to the age that she wanted me to bring something back too, I made the mistake of assuming that she wanted stuff like Lilia wants. So I came back from a trip and I walked in the door and I handed Lilia her little toy, and she takes it and she's smiling and she clutches it to her chest. She looks a little bit like Gollum from the Lord of the Rings with the ring in her hand. And then I hand the exact same thing to Caroline, and Caroline takes one look at it, drops it on the ground, and collapses into a puddle and begins to cry. And this is what I hear her say: "I want food." And I'm looking at her there and I'm like, this is my daughter. Like, my heart felt so connected to her in that moment. Because that's me at noon every day in my office in Liverpool, New York, lying on the ground crying for food. So some of you are more like Lilia. If you got extra money, you like to spend it on stuff, clothes, electronics, games, whatever. And some of you are like Caroline. If you have an extra dollar, some of you already are thinking about the dollar menu at McDonald's on the way home. So who in the room, you're a Lilia. You spend your extra money on stuff, clothes and electronics. And then who in the room, you're like, you spend your money, you got extra dollar, you spend on food. Let's get tacos after this. Let's go. I saw a 24/7 taco place. Let's go afterwards. So they're so different from each other, but there is one way in which all of my daughters are the exact same, and it's that they consistently look out for themselves. I didn't teach them that. Aaron might have, but I didn't teach them that. They think about themselves. Whenever we call them to dinner, they always run into the dining room, and they have this amazing ability to quickly measure up who's got the better plate. And then they fight for that plate. Not once in my entire life have I heard them say, "Oh, Caroline, this plate looks better. Why don't you have it?" Just once, Jesus. I just want to hear it once, right? I've never heard it because they always are thinking about number one. They're always thinking about themselves. Even my littlest one, Madeline, when I go to take her to bed and we start to walk up the stairs to her bedroom, she has this 3-step strategy approach to keep me from getting her to the bed. And so when we first get to the bottom of the stairwell and she knows what's coming, she just looks at me and starts going, "No, no, 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 no. No, 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 no." And I just keep walking up the stairs. I get about halfway up the stairs and she switches her strategy. And she just starts kissing my face, just over and over, just kissing me and kissing me and kissing Daddy. And I'm not moved. I just keep walking up the stairs, not stop. And right when we get to the edge of her room, she changes her strategy again, and she takes her good hand and she just starts smacking my face as hard as she can. She's already looking out for herself, looking out for number one. And listen, you and I aren't really that different. I saw some of you get the best piece of meat up there. Like we're still looking out for ourselves. One of the clearest illustrations of this is, imagine sometime this weekend there's a group picture taken, and somehow ends up on Facebook. Now, when a group picture is taken, how do you determine whether it's a good group picture or not? What do I look like, right? You look at a group picture, whose face do you look for first? Yours. You know what yours looks like. It looks the same but you got to find it doesn't matter. Everybody else, it could be their greatest picture that they've ever taken. But if your eyes are closed or you grew an extra chin or something, all of a sudden you're like, this is a terrible picture. Untag me in this picture. I hate this picture. Because we're looking out for ourselves. And I think that one of the reasons why we look out for ourselves so much and we're always looking out for number one is because on some level, we aren't convinced that anyone else is. We're not really sure that someone else is, and we're not always sure that God actually is looking out for us. And so it becomes hard to trust. And tonight I want to talk to you about trust. Trust is a big deal. Trust, I believe, is really what the Christian faith rises and falls on. Do we actually trust God? We say we trust God. We sing about trusting God, but do our lives say that we trust God? And tonight we're going to look at a passage in Colossians. Paul's writing to the church of Colossae, and this part of Colossians chapter 1 was most likely a hymn that was sung by the church. We don't know if Paul wrote this hymn or if Paul is just quoting this hymn. People consider this to be one of the central Christological passages in all of the New Testament. In other words, this is the place that we look to say, who is Jesus and what has He done? And we're going to look at this in Colossians chapter 1, beginning in verse 15. The words will be on the screen for you. I'm reading to you from the ESV, and you're going to see from this passage, the message is, you can trust. Verse 15, talking about Jesus. He is the image of the invisible God. He's the firstborn of all creation. For by Him all things were created in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through Him and for Him. Now verse 17 is really our key verse tonight. And He is before all things, and in Him all things hold together. He's the head of the body, the church. He's the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything He might be preeminent. For in Him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through Him to reconcile to Himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of His cross. The first thing I want to share with you tonight is this. You can trust His plan. You can trust His plan because He's seen it all. Do you see it said in verse 17 that He is before all things? Paul's teaching us something here really important. He's teaching us that Jesus Christ is eternal, that He's always existed, that He is without beginning and without end. Now, there's a phrase in verse 16 that's been very confusing to scholars over the years where it says that Jesus was the firstborn of creation. It's actually been the reason why we've had certain heresies in the history of the church. Arianism would be the heresy that was primarily out of this misinterpretation of this text, where they're saying, oh, so if Jesus was the firstborn of creation, then God the Father existed first, and then Jesus came along. So it was God the Father chronologically and then Jesus. But that's not what Paul's saying here. Because if that's true, then Jesus isn't eternal. He's a created being. But Jesus is not a created being. He's the Creator. It says it right in the text that all things have been created by Him and for Him. So what Paul is actually saying when he says that Jesus is the firstborn of all creation is he's speaking to the honor and the rights and the privileges that went with being the firstborn in this culture. Jesus was not created. He is the Creator. And this matters because in Romans chapter 1, Paul says if we worship the creation and not the Creator, it's idolatry. If Jesus was created, then worshiping Him would actually be an act of idolatry. But He was not created. He is the Creator. You can trust His plan. He's before all things. He's seen it all. Because Jesus is before all things, because He is eternal, here's what it means. A couple things. One, He's not confined by time like you and I are. He sees the beginning from the end. He sees into the heart of every human being. He already sees the end of the story. He's seen it all. He sees it all. The psalmist in 139:16 says, "You saw me, God, before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day had passed." He's seen it all. And His greater perspective helps us to trust His greater plan. When Aaron and I got married, we did what all good couples do. I shouldn't say that because maybe you didn't, but we did premarital counseling. And they prepped us for all the different things we needed to be ready for as best as they can, right? It's hard to do, but as best as they can. But the one thing they didn't talk to us about, and maybe you haven't heard about if you have not married, is this thing that I call the merging of TV shows. I was 28 years old when I got married, so I had some rhythms in my life. You know what I mean? Like, I had some things I like to watch and things I like to do. And Aaron had some things too. So we started talking about shows, and Aaron was like, well, I really like hour-long crime dramas. I'm like, why? So she's like, watch CSI and Without a Trace. And I'm like, that stuff is so terrible. Why do you watch this stuff? And I'm like, she's like, well, what do you like? I'm like, I like Sports Center and the Food Network. I mean, that's pretty much like, that's what I like to watch. And then other stuff. And I like certain comedies. And The Office was really popular back then. And thankfully, we both like that. That's just God's grace on our lives that but we had to figure this out. I mean, this is a big deal to figure out. This was before we had DVR. DVR saved a lot of marriages. But we had to figure it out. And so there was one show she watched I'd never even heard of before. It was on the Discovery Channel. I didn't even know that channel existed. And it's a show called How It's Made. You ever watch that? Okay. Well, even if you've never seen it, you should know what it's about just by the name of it. How it's made. How things are made. And it takes you from beginning to end of how a microphone is made, or how a chair is made, or how this thing was made. The thing about that show is that if you jump in too late, you don't have a clue what's being made. Right? And sometimes we'd be flipping through the channels, and it would be in the middle of the creation or making of something, and Aaron would be like, oh, I like this show. And we both play this game like, what are they making? Like, it doesn't, because we're just seeing a little 30-second clip. We don't understand the plan. We don't understand the design. We didn't see the beginning, and we haven't seen the end. A lot of times we're looking at life, trying to understand God's plan, and you know what we're seeing? A 30-second clip. We don't see design. We don't always see reason. We don't understand where it's headed. But He's before all things. He's seen it all. He knows the beginning from the ends. Now, let's be honest. This sort of talk about God having a plan and God being sovereign over us, this raises a tension, and the tension is simply this. What about the bad things in our lives that happen? Where was God's plan then? What about the suffering? Why do bad things, so to speak, happen to good people, right? People have that question. You know what my answer is most of the time when people ask me that? My answer is this. I don't know. I don't know why those things happen. I mean, I could give some theological answers as to why, well, there's sin in the world and the world is broken and God... And that's not untrue, of course, but very often I just have to own up and say, I don't know why this happened. But isn't that the point? In order for me to know what God's doing and be able to explain everything He's doing, I'd have to be bigger than God, smarter than God. I'd have to have a higher perspective than God. But I don't. I can't. I'm finite. He's infinite. I'm temporary. He's eternal. I can't explain everything that God is doing. That's not even realistic. My 2-year-old daughter, when we were taking her to get her, this is one of the worst things about being a parent, by the way, is taking your kids in for immunization shots. I mean, I hated that because they make you help. They make you hold so they're like, Dad, can you come help us? What, help you jam needles into my daughter? No, yeah, we need your help. What do you need me to do? Just hold her down. So here I am. I got her pinned to this thing, and she thinks it's a game. Like, our faces are just an inch away from each other. She's like, oh, we're wrestling, we're having fun. She's smiling. And then all of a sudden, I can tell when she gets the needle because her eyes just burst open, and she looks at you like it's the greatest betrayal that's ever happened in the history of humankind. And she's like, how could you possibly let this happen? She doesn't understand. Now, I know there's a lot of debate about immunizations, but the reason why we do it is because we believe this can help her in the future. That it's going to help her be healthy. So we have a plan. She doesn't understand. And let's be honest. Even if somehow I could communicate to her little brain at that point, here's why. Do you think she'd go, oh, well then, jab away. I got another leg. Like, bring it on. It actually wouldn't take the pain away. My 5-year-old doesn't understand why she has to brush her teeth at night. Why she has to eat vegetables. I don't get it either, but she doesn't understand. But we know it's good for her. My 8-year-old, Lily, a beautiful little blonde-haired, blue-eyed third grader who already has boys sending her notes and giving her Valentine's stuff, she doesn't understand why I want to fight every kid in her class. Like, she doesn't know. But I know. I know why I was a boy. I know why I want to fight. Now, the gap between their understanding and my understanding, how much greater is the gap between our understanding and God's understanding? His ways are higher. His thoughts are higher. We don't always know, but it doesn't mean there isn't a plan. You can trust His plan because He's seen it all. He's before all things. I know this still doesn't answer all of our questions. You know, the Bible, by the way, many times shows that there are good things that result from bad circumstances. Here's 3 examples. The people of God are saved from starvation only after a mouthy little brother named Joseph is hated on by his brothers, thrown into a pit, and sold into slavery. You think at any point in that process, Joseph thought, this is going well. Like, this is working out. I see the plan. A ship filled with heathens ends up having an impromptu worship service because of their encounter with the disobedient runaway prophet named Jonah. The Old Testament character Ruth meets and marries the great-grandfather of King David, but only after she's widowed, goes through a famine, and has to leave her home and everything that she knew. Here's what I'm saying to you. What if instead of trusting God's plan, we are anxiously and frantically asking God to remove us from the very set of circumstances that He intends to use to shape us and to grow us and to form us? And I totally get that this still doesn't answer all the questions. I get it. I'm probably in the most grief-filled season of my entire life. I thought that the worst funeral I would ever do was 8 years ago when a 14-year-old girl in our youth group was killed by a drunk driver. I'll never forget that funeral. Room filled with broken teenagers and broken hearts. I'll never forget that. I thought it was the worst I would ever do. And then this past year, a young girl who graduated from our youth ministry and got married and had a little baby, her husband, with no reason, he's in jail for life now, murders her daughter, his daughter. It was the biggest crime news story in Syracuse, New York, all of last year. And I remember when she called, I remember the first phone call that I had with her. I mean, I don't know why that stuff makes me want to say to God, you got a plan? Like in this? You got a plan in the middle of this? One of my best friends from high school this past fall, her 40-year-old husband dies of a heart attack lying in bed next to her. Our assistant superintendent's wife, who was perfectly fine one moment, a month later, she's gone. And this past December, my dad, who's 66 years old, who turns 67 next Sunday, was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Spread to his liver, spread to his lymph nodes, and now can't even get out of bed. So I'm not just coming along and saying, come on, believe it's my prayer. God, I'm trusting your plan. Like I don't get it all the time. But if you're before all things, if Paul's right, and Jesus, if you're eternal, and if you see the beginning from the end, then I'm going to trust your plan. Now, in those moments, there's 3 questions I often have. And the first one is this: God, do you care? And when we look at the cross forever settles that question. For whatever reason there's pain in our lives, I can tell you what one of the reasons isn't. And it isn't that He doesn't care. When Jesus walked to the cross to do what He did, He forever settled the question of, does God care? Sometimes I wonder, God, do you know? Do you even know what this is like down here? And of course, Jesus was the Word who became flesh. In fact, Christianity is the only religion who at its very center has the humiliation of its own God. If God used tremendous suffering to bring about His plan of redemption, then why are we surprised when suffering in our lives is part of the way He brings about redemption in us and through us? And then the other question that sometimes I wrestle with is, once again, just do you have a plan in all of this? And I have to believe, I have to hold on to the promise that He's working all things out for our good and for His glory. You know, He gets glory. If my dad gets healed, He gets glory. But if my dad goes home, He gets the glory. Amen. It's somehow for our good. It wouldn't feel good, believe me. Somehow it's for my good. It's certainly for His glory. And in Revelation chapter 21, verse 5, we get this glimpse into the end of times. And the one who sits on the throne says, "Behold, I'm making all things new." You know what's interesting to me about that passage? It's the verse before, I think, where he says, I will wipe every tear from your eyes. Now, I don't know if this is the best handling of the text. So let me just tell you my opinion on this. That's a mixture of verb tenses. Did you notice that? I will wipe every tear from your eyes. I am making everything new. Present progressive. I am making everything new. Right now, in the midst of it, I'm making everything new. Future tense. There will be no more sickness, no more sadness, no more death. I will wipe every tear from your eyes. Here's what I think it might mean. I think it might mean that while He's making all things new, sometimes there still will be tears in our eyes. Some days our eyes will be filled with tears because that's future tense that He's going to wipe those tears away. But it doesn't mean He's not currently somehow making it new. You can trust His plan because He's seen it all. Second thought for you tonight is this. You can trust His provision. He's done it all. Yeah, Jesus has gone before you in eternity, but He also broke into time and went before you. You know, we didn't read this, but in a verse right before it, verse 12, a couple verses earlier, Paul says, you've been qualified to share in the inheritance. You've been delivered from darkness and transferred into the Son's kingdom. You are qualified to share in God's inheritance. Well, what's your resume? What qualifies you? What's so impressive about you and me that says, hey, you're any of you ever qualified to get a mortgage? Like, you got to give them all your finances. They look at all your credit. They look at everything about you. They want your pay stubs, and finally they say you're qualified for a mortgage for X amount of dollars. Well, here we're qualified not for a mortgage, but we're qualified to share in God's inheritance. Based on what? Well, verse 20 that we read answers the question for us. Through Jesus, who reconciled to Himself all things, He made peace by the blood of His cross. Jesus went before you, not just in eternity, but Jesus went before you in life and in death. Last summer, I watched a ton of the Summer Olympics. Anybody else in here, you enjoy the Summer Olympics? You got into it a little bit. I love the Summer Olympics. One of the things I like about the Summer Olympics is it has a way of making you care about events and sports you literally haven't thought about in 4 years. I mean, one night my wife's like, babe, it's midnight. Come on, come up to bed. I'm like, leave me alone. I'm watching badminton. She's like, you were calling it tiny tennis like 20 minutes ago. You're not a badminton fan. I'm like, no, I love it because I'm all caught up in like the Americas doing. So the first week of the Olympics, the one event that was live every single night was swimming. Right? You remember this? And swimming, if you're an American, it's a great thing to watch because we are amazing at it. Not me, but we, the American Olympians. And so I'm up, I think it was Tuesday night, watching the Olympics. I'm scrolling through my Twitter feed while I'm watching the Olympics, and Bill Murray, the comedian actor, sends out a tweet. And his tweet says this. He says, I wish that every single Olympic event had one normal person participating. Just so we could have a frame of reference. I thought, that's awesome. I mean, talk about the ratings going up. Just put Average Joe in there trying to do judo against somebody else. Like, that would be amazing. So, with that in mind, I was like watching the swimming, thinking about average people swimming, and I was like, man, so the fastest in the world, the Olympic pools are 50 meters wide, right? The fastest in the world can go freestyle 20 seconds from one side to the other. The fastest in the world. And I thought, how fast is that really, though, compared to a normal person? So, believe it or not, I'm a member of the YMCA. And so, the next day, I go down to the YMCA, and I'm like, I want to swim a lap. And I haven't swum in a long time, or swam, or whatever the verb tense is. But I'm going to swim, and as I swim, I'm going to time myself, because I want that frame of reference that Bill Murray had tweeted about. So I get to the pool, and by the sovereignty of God, there's one lane open, waiting for me. I get into the water, and I'm like, okay, 20 seconds, 50 meters, 20 seconds, 50 meters. All right, let's just see how I do. And I take off. Well, within the first 5 seconds, I completely pulled my right hamstring. But I just kept going because I wasn't going to drown. So I just kept going as best as I could. Now, my wife, who is everything I'm not, she's so gracious and kind and generous with her words. She never has anything bad to say about anybody. I can't get her to critique my preaching at all. Like, she will never say anything bad. So I was like, I thought it was amazing, like always. But so when she says something that's even remotely critical, It's a big deal. And so she was there, and I said, man, I hurt my leg. I think it really kept me from swimming my best. And she was like, what was going on with your arms? I was like, what do you mean? I was doing the freestyle. Like, I was doing like this. I was doing like this. And she goes, no, you were doing that with your right arm. But your left arm looked like the arm of a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And it was just kind of doing like this. So if you saw me from above, my right arm and my left leg are going full throttle, but my right leg is just hanging there, and my left arm is apparently doing this. As a result, I smashed my face against the lane divider like 6 times, going from one side of the pool to the other side of the pool. I didn't think I was going to make it to the other side. I finally get to the other side. I grab the edge. I'm breathing really heavy, more heavy than I thought I would be. And I'm like, all right, you made it. Calm down. Just relax. Stop all that crying. And I was like, how long did that take me? It's hard to count when you think you're dying. But I thought to myself, I think it was about 35 seconds. Which, to be honest, I didn't feel terrible about. Okay? Fastest in the world, 20 seconds. 35 seconds for a guy who's not in shape and was only using 2 appendages. Like, I didn't think it was that terrible. And the lifeguard comes by and he goes, hey buddy, what are you doing? And I said, oh, well, I've been watching the Olympics. I'm really into this swimming, and I just was curious as to how fast I could swim. I said, I know the fastest in the world, 20 seconds and 50 meters in 20 seconds. And so I just was and he goes, oh, yeah, well, our pool is only 25 meters long. So you're going to have to swim back if you actually want to know your time. Which I immediately did not do. So that night I'm watching swimming again with a whole new level of appreciation for what Michael Phelps is doing out there. And I turned to my wife as we were watching and I said, you know what? My worst nightmare in the world after this morning is if by some deep, dark magic, right now, Michael Phelps and I switch places. And now I'm standing there getting ready to swim a race. Standing there wearing what he's wearing, which would be the worst part of the whole thing for everybody involved, and getting ready to jump in and having to swim against the best in the world with my reputation and the country's reputation at stake. And when I thought of that nightmare, I imagined 2 scenarios. Scenario A, I'm getting ready to jump in and someone taps me on my shoulder. And I turn around and it's Michael Phelps. And Michael Phelps says, hey buddy, clearly you don't know what you're doing. I'm gonna swim a lap and just watch me. I'm gonna show you how it's done. He's like, pay very careful attention, take good notes, watch what I do with my hands, watch what I do with my feet, watch when I breathe, watch the little flippy thing I do when I get to the other side of the pool. And so then he jumps into the pool and he swims to give me an example of how to do it. Arguably the greatest example in the history of Olympic swimming. So he does it, and he comes back, and he gets out of the water, and he goes, all right, well, I showed you how to do it. Now you go do it. And thanks, man. I mean, I would be grateful, but what is that really going to change about my performance? Really nothing. Scenario B, I'm getting ready to jump in again, and someone taps me on the shoulder, and once again it's Michael Phelps. But this time he says to me, hey, bud, let me swim it for you. Let me jump in and swim in your place. And whatever happens in this race, you'll get the credit for it. And whatever time you were going to get, I'll take it. The worst swimming time in the history of the Olympics, I'll take it. And he jumps in, and Michael Phelps does what he always does. He wins the gold medal. But when it comes time for the award ceremony and the giving out of the medals, I'm the one standing on the top of the podium. And I'm the one who's wearing the gold medal around my neck as the national anthem is being played. And his name is next to my time. Now, we often think of Jesus as coming and living on this earth for 33 plus years. And we say to teenagers and to children and to adults, hey, pay very careful attention to what he did. Take good notes. Because when you get your chance, you need to do it just like him. He's an example. The greatest example ever. Is it true? Of course it's true. Is it the gospel? No. It's not the gospel. The gospel is this, that Jesus came from heaven to earth and tapped humanity on the shoulder and said, let me do it for you. Let me jump in for you. You and I, we weren't going to get it right. We had as much chance of getting it right as I do of winning an Olympic gold medal in swimming. And so Jesus goes in on our behalf. And He doesn't just live for us, He lives as us. He doesn't just die for us, He dies as us. He lives the life that we should have lived. He dies the death that we should have died. And He does this not as our example, although He is an example, but He did not come primarily to be your example. He came primarily to be your substitutes. And that's the good news of the gospel, that Jesus Christ did for you. He accomplished for you what you could never accomplish for yourself. The gospel is good news because He went before you. You can trust His provision. He's done it all. There's nothing lacking in what He did. What He did at the cross is sufficient. What He did with His life is complete. You and I aren't going to add to it with our own little moral agendas and our own little self-righteous attempts. You just aren't going to. You aren't going to make yourself good enough for God. You aren't going to impress God with your religiosity or your spirituality. The only hope that you have is that Jesus did it all, and that you can trust in His provision. The gospel is this: with Jesus' death, He absorbed the wrath of God for you. But with His life, He secured the welcome of God for you. It's both. I'm an AG's pastor kid also. I grew up around this, and I, for most of my life, just thought the gospel was Jesus died for me. But that's only half the gospel. That's actually only a third of the gospel. Because really the gospel is He lived for you. He lived as you. This is what it means. If you trust fully and solely in Jesus Christ's work on your behalf, that God the Father, when He looks at you tonight, sitting where you're at, with your insecurities, with your inadequacies, He does not see you as a better version of yourself. He doesn't see you as a more moral version of yourself. He doesn't see you as a more Christian version of yourself. He sees you as if you live the life that Jesus lived. His righteousness has been imputed to you. Come on, rest. Rest. So many people, so many Christians are tired. You know why you're tired? Because you're swinging between efforts to manage your sin and manufacture your own righteousness. It's exhausting. Managing your badness, manufacturing your goodness, it's exhausting. And it will never work. And it's actually an affront to the cross. So what is the life of the Christian? Receive what Jesus did for you. Rest in what Jesus did for you. Rejoice in what Jesus did for you. Remember, rehearse what Jesus did for you. Preach the gospel to yourself, because the gospel is this, that what God required, He also provided. The very thing that He said, you got to give me. God required payment for sin. Jesus provided it. God required perfection from you and me. Jesus provided it. Everything that God required, Jesus has provided. You can trust His provision because He's done it all. Think about the story of Scripture. God provided covering for Adam and Eve. He provided protection for Cain. He provided an ark for Noah. He provided the son of laughter to 100-year-old Abraham and 90-year-old Sarah. He provided a wife for Isaac. He provided a name-changing, game-changing wrestling match for Jacob. He provided the interpretation to dreams for Joseph. He provided a deliverer for the people in Egyptian slavery. He provided a way through the Red Sea for Moses. He provided a battle strategy for Joshua. He provided wisdom to judges, insight to prophets, access to priests, power to kings, return to exiles. And ultimately, when none of that was sufficient to meet humankind's greatest need, He provided His Son, Jesus, to go before you. Amen. He is before all things. He went before you. You can trust His provision because He's done it all. And the last thing tonight is this. You can trust His plan. You can trust His provision. But you can trust His power. And you can trust His power because it says in the second half of verse 17, in Him all things hold together. Now, if we were going to do a model of the universe, and I was going to use this little penny, somebody over there loaned me a penny, thank you so much, this little penny, and say this penny in our model of the universe represents the sun. Okay? So we've shrunk the sun down to this size for the purpose of a model. You know where the next star would be located if the sun was this small? In Redding, California. Over 350 miles away, if the sun was this small to scale, that's where the next star is. At this scale, the Milky Way, our galaxy would be over 7.5 million miles across. Or that's 30 times the distance between the Earth and the Moon. And you know, our galaxy is just a speck in the universe. And Paul has the audacity to say, in Jesus, all things hold together. Jesus sustains everything He created. He holds it together. Everything has its beginning in Him, and everything holds together in Him. Now, this is power. I mean, this is real power. In Hebrews chapter 1, verse 3, the author of Hebrews says that Jesus sustains it all just through the word of His power. Just His spoken word. Just His spoken word sustains the entire universe. Now, this is true. He holds it all. This is true both on a macro level, which is what I just talked about, the universe, but it's also true on a micro level, your life. Let's be honest. Which is harder to believe? And I didn't see any of your minds getting blown when I said He holds the universe. It's like, yeah, we know. We sing about it. He holds the whole world in His hands. Yeah, but He holds your world in His hands. I remember when my little girl was born 3 months early, and she was 2 pounds, 1.5 ounces. I remember thinking, God, I know You hold the whole world in Your hands, but can You hold 2 pounds, 1.5 ounces in Your hand? Can we trust Him with our world? Can we trust Him with the things that we treasure, the things that we love so much? We're like, we want to get our own, we want to hold it together, don't we? Let's just be realistic. You and I, your leader, you want to hold things together yourself. You want to hold together your kids' lives, your teenagers' lives, the children that you work with. Don't you sometimes just want to wrap them up and take them all home so you can just fix them and somehow make it all work, make it better, and take them out of the miserable homes that some of them are in? We're like that little kid. You ever seen a little kid that has their hands full of toys, and then they look over and they see one more toy, and they're like, I got to have it. And so they run over, and when they bend over to pick up that toy, what happens? 2 more toys fall out. And they're like, what sort of sorcery is this? And then they run over and they grab another toy, and they're running around, and soon they have less toys than they started with. That's you and I trying to wrap our arms around things. We try to hold on to our own world, or we look to other people to hold it together for us. We put our trust in other people. It could be a spouse. It could be anything. But we put our hope in them. But we don't hold it together. Jesus holds it together. Trust His power. He holds it all. He's seen it all. He's done it all. He holds it all. You can trust. Probably about 10 years ago, maybe longer now, I went with a friend. Oh, it must have been longer. 15 years ago, I went with my friend to go babysit. And she was babysitting a family that lives in a town in New York called Skinny Atlas. Now, you wouldn't probably know this for any reason, but Skinny Atlas is incredibly, incredibly wealthy. It's when Bill Clinton was president, it's where him and Hillary actually vacationed when they were president. So it's a really nice area. It's about 40 minutes from Syracuse. And so we went to babysit these 4 kids. And the house was incredible. I walked in the house, and the decor was amazing, and the furniture was perfect, and everything was like right out of a catalog, amazing, right out of Pottery Barn. I was walking through the house looking at all the different things, and I walked in this one bathroom, and I saw a mirror hanging there, and it was incredible. And it was like the outside of the mirror was like the most beautiful mosaic I've ever seen in my life. Different colors, different shapes, different textures. And I went to my friend and I said, hey, where did this lady buy this mirror? It's beautiful. It took my breath away. It's incredible. And she said to me, my friend, she goes, oh no, she didn't buy that. She made it. Now this is before Pinterest, so she's gets a lot of credit for this. And I said, what do you mean she made it? She goes, yeah. As her 4 children were growing up, every time they broke something in the house, she saved the pieces. She took it, a broken vase, a broken mug, a broken picture frame, and she just would set it aside. And she began to put together this beautiful mirror out of all the things that they had broken. I had 2 thoughts. One was a little silly and one was a little serious. The silly thought was this. I kind of picture her as she was getting close to completion, strategically placing breakable stuff throughout the house, right? And then pushing her kids into it so that she could finish her project. But the other thought I had was those moments when that little boy would knock over a vase and it would fall to the ground and it would shatter, And he would be like, oh, I'm in so much trouble. He tried to hide it. He tried to make sure his mom didn't hear and didn't see. And I picture the mom coming over and going, no, let me look. Let me look. She gets down and begins to look through the broken pieces of the vase. And I just picture her grabbing one piece, holding it up and saying, I can use this. I can use this. And I'm telling you, we all have brokenness in our lives that we struggle to trust God with. But if I could pray one thing for you tonight, it would be this, that you would hear the Spirit of your Father whisper to your heart, I can use this. Wherever you're at, whatever you're walking through, whatever you're trying to hide, whatever you're embarrassed of, whatever you're ashamed of, God is weaving together, He's putting together a mosaic called redemption. It's all out of broken pieces because it's all we really have to offer is brokenness. But He can use it. And if this is the God that we serve, you know what it means? You can trust.